Welcome to the Made for Agriculture podcast. Today's hosts are Adam Jones and Cameron Horan.
All right, folks, welcome to another episode of the Made for Agriculture podcast. My name is Adam Jones.
And I'm Cameron Horan.
And we're back this morning with our regional agronomists. Everybody's excited. We've already talked before we hit the record button here this morning how excited everybody is that the sun is out today. So count your blessings for a Friday morning, right? So if you are tuning in to us, it is Friday, May 30th of 25. So we're going to go around the horn here, get some crop updates, see what these guys have going on, and I'm sure you'll be able to learn plenty to apply on your farm by listening to what they've got rolling. So let's get it right into it, and I'll shoot it over to Scott Wilburn, and he looks like already out and about this morning. So morning, Scott. Appreciate you jumping on here. What's going on?
You bet. Good morning. Well, as far as the corn crop goes, we're anywhere from doing quite a bit of top dressing all the way down to just spiking through on the eastern side of my area. Corn's ranging anywhere from, like I say, emerging up to V8. Quite a bit of difference. You're talking about the sunshine. It's very nice to see. But the rain has been very, very sporadic across our region. So, we missed most of everything last week. Last weekend on the eastern side, sounds like a tenth or two on the western side, but where my territory meets Shannon, they're awfully wet. Bring that up while I'm talking about corn because, I was already having some discussions yesterday about trying to get a plane in on some corn that really needed nitrogen. And there's just, they're thinking a week or better for a ground rig if it stops raining. And as Shannon's probably going to talk about here in a little bit, it's not supposed to stop raining. So yeah, we're just a big variation from one end of central region to the other as far as the corn crop goes. On the bean crop, a lot of beans were just planted, just starting to poke through. V4 is kind of catching the upper end of our beans that have been in the ground for a little bit. Quite a few calls the last few days on replants. How low can I go? That kind of thing. But in a lot of cases, I know guys are going to go in and thicken them up, but there's quite a few that are just with the spotty rains the last few days are still hoping to maybe get another few thousand out of the ground, with the rains that we've had. So that's kind of what's going on in the bean crop. The other thing, and I feel like a broken record bringing this up, the other thing that seems to be, about half the phone calls you receive are just trying to kill water hemp. On the positive side, we have went back in on some corn where it looked like we had missed with HPPDs the first go around. And again, we blame it on weather, but the weather has been, I got a jacket on still even this morning. I'm going to be shedding it pretty quick, I think. But, it's been awfully cool. If it's warmed up, it's been just for an hour or two, it seems like in the afternoon, and then we're cooling down again. I want to blame a lot of this trouble with the water hemp on the weather, and where we've went back in some of these fields, we have killed it. So I think that is going on, but then there are others where we've went in with a strong shot and done everything right, and it's still looking pretty healthy. So we're gonna have to follow up through some of those, maybe even after harvest and or towards the end of the season when we have seed that we can maybe check and see if we're dealing with more resistance in new areas. So with that, I think that's kind of the update for Central.
Yeah, good call, Scott. I guess one other thing that, and I don't know how many early beans you mentioned you had some at, I think you said V4. There were a lot of early beans planted this time. We have not had the weather to progress growth stages with them too much, but some of those bigger beans, I would foresee starting to flower in the next 2 or 3 weeks here. They've got a lot of nodes on them, so I assume, I guess one thing to hit on maybe, Scott, would be some of our herbicide cutoffs when that happens.
Yeah. We get into to flowering, that shuts us off for Liberty, which is, that's the big one to talk about because most of our post applications, whether you're on the enlist program, extend program, I mean, it's going to have Liberty in it. So
Yeah.
that's going to be the one that we're going to really watch. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we're almost 1st of June. We're 3 weeks from, the 1st of summer. But for those beans that have been in the ground for a while, and maturity has something to do with that as well. But if they've got a couple trifoliates on them, it's very possible they could start flowering even before the solstice, which really was the goal. So
Absolutely, that's what we were trying to get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that could be in the next 10 days, 2 weeks,
I mean,
maybe.
I would say, I planted some 3.9s on April 14th or something like that, and I would expect them to flower in the next 10 days. They got a lot of nodes, and so I think it's going to happen. I think so.
Yeah,
just something to keep in mind there.
I haven't been in a lot of those, but I have had some conversations where the April beans are looking pretty good, and the May beans are the ones we're talking about needing to thicken up or even replant. So
yeah. So well, and we were kind of all over the board because we got some early beans in, and then we got kicked out. Unless you're in Craig's area, basically, we got we got kicked out of the field for a while, and then everybody kind of went back. And so I think a lot of people kind of gather up fields to then okay, well, now we're going to spray all my beans together. And it's just something to keep in mind that those early beans may have flowers on them by the time you kind of gather them all up and put them into a pile to get ready to spray. So
good point.
All right, Jesse, what's going on down south this morning? You're next on my screen here.
Oh, not much has changed from last week. Just seems like we get a day or two a week to get something done. So you run hard for that and get done what you can, and then we don't have to dry out again. But corn, I think we're getting to the point where everybody's kind of done with planting corn. If it ain't got planted, it ain't going to. And then even down south, we got some corn that's V10, V11. So big spread there. Beans the same way. Still trying to plant beans, and then we got some beans at R1. I bet wheat harvest is probably 10 days away. That is one thing you didn't talk about a while ago on your wheat. So I'd say just kind of expect that to come sooner than later, especially if we turn off into some 80s. I know everybody's talking about how cool it is. I'm cooler than normal, but I'm still a little bit warmer than everybody else. But I think next week is probably the first solid week that will be in the 80s every day. Usually we just get up to 82, 83 one day a week and then come back down. We kind of mentioned before we started about Liberty. Like I said, we've been cooler than normal, but we've had some pretty good luck with Liberty and Roundup going out on some beans. I kind of talked to a few guys about that. I said I was nervous spraying it because we were like low 70s, kind of cloudy. And they said, yeah, but how big are your weeds, Jesse? And I was like, well, they're small because we're spraying it early. How much AMS are you putting in it? I go, 3 pounds. And he goes, well, think about it. You're doing everything right. I said, I don't think it's necessarily so much the weather as it is we finally figured out how to treat Liberty. Run 40 ounces, run 3 pounds of the acre AMS, gallon per 100 of oil, 20 gallon of water, and small weeds. So I don't want to discourage anybody from trying Liberty because it's cool. You're better off to spray small weeds and get 80, 90% control and have to come back and hit it again to clean it up versus waiting it to go from a 1 to 2 inch pigweed to 4 or 5, and then you're getting 50% control. So kind of just keep that in mind. I don't back up from your Liberty spraying. I mean, I'm not going to say if it's a 45-degree morning, go out there and start spraying at 9 o'clock, but kind of use some common sense, but don't back up from it.
Well, Jesse, I guess on that front, the water hemp's not, I mean, we complain about the crop not growing very fast, but, the water hemp's getting the same conditions. So it's not, normally during some of these weather spells that we get, it goes from 2 inches to 8 inches in a week, it hasn't done that either. So your small water hemp is staying small longer too.
Yeah, but I mean, my only call out there is even a 4-inch water hemp might as well be an 8-inch water hemp when it comes to killing.
Nope, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. No, that's good stuff. Good call, Jesse. Appreciate it. All right, we'll swing on down to Shannon. I'm sure we're going to hear something about it's rained recently. So on the edge of your seat, folks.
Contrary to belief, the sun is shining today, Adam. We're in a good mood. But no, I think we've received probably the most of the rainfall for the districts. With that, a lot of work in the shed, getting combines ready. Jesse mentioned wheat harvest will be here in about 10 days, and late first week, second week of June, probably going to start rolling. One thing we've been seeing, any place we've overlapped nitrogen in the field, anything that we were pushing nitrogen and we didn't get growth regulator out there, like losing the name of it now, but Palisade, there we go. Then get Palisade out there. We are seeing wheat go down. It seems like every rainfall we're getting now, every storm with some wind in it, just a little bit more starts laying down. There's some concerns that come with that. So far, I haven't seen any really bad conditions versus the whole field. It's mainly been corners or places that get overlapped. But as wheat goes down, it's harder to harvest. We start seeing green quality issues. We could start seeing it sprouting in the heads. Could lead to a lot of other issues. So it's just something to keep an eye on. Probably would be a good idea to sit down, make a harvest plan, try to get those fields, if you can, get them out first, just so they're not laying in the field longer. Head scab, most everything got treated this year with fungicide because of the future forecast. There are some cases, though, where we were pushing the label on that early side, or maybe it came in just a tick late because of some rain. So we are seeing a little bit of head scab in the field. Not a lot that really concerns me. I think there's enough good wheat that we'll be able to blend it just fine. The one thing that is concerning right now, and we won't know until we get combines in the field, and that's what test weight's going to be. Typically, when we have a wet spring like this, we have a lot of rainfall. That's when grain quality starts diminishing, and one of the first things that goes is test weight. So last year, we're in the similar scenario, not quite as bad with the moisture, and we didn't see very many effects, especially on fields that got treated. But this year, we're well above the rainfall that we've had last year, and that's definitely a concern in my mind. So making sure we have a plan in place if we do run into those scenarios, and how we're going to combat grain quality on wheat. The other thing, Scott and Jesse both talked about spraying weeds and corn. That's obviously been a challenge for us. Unfortunately, we don't have pontoon boats to spray with. So fields have been pretty saturated. With that, though, there has been some work done in between rains. And the one thing I want to hit on is some crop safety stuff. There was a lot of generic premixes that were ran in our area this year. Large point because of price. Price point was a lot better than some name brand stuff. But now that we're in season, we're starting to see some of the effects of some of those generics, particularly generics with mesotrione in them. So mesotriones are group 27. It'd be like a Callisto. Our premixes not always are compatible, and so normally when we have a name brand that may be a little bit more expensive, there's usually a lot more things inside of the jug other than just the active ingredients on the label. There's tank compatibility agents in there. There's surfactants in there. There's crop safeners in there. There's just a lot of things that aren't actually on the label, and it's hard to actually know what those are without talking to one of the chemical reps that are out there. And so when you start looking at the generics and how generics get so cheap, well, what are the things you start taking out when you're trying to get a product cheaper? It's the stuff that's not on the label, the stuff that you don't see. And really, you have no idea what you're getting until you actually start spraying on the crop. And this year, I wrote about it in my article last week. So if you haven't got a chance, go back and take a look at those pictures. This year, we're seeing a lot of fields that are getting sprayed with these premixes, and we're seeing some significant crop response. There's one field not too far from my house that was sprayed 3 weeks ago, and it is still showing up in the field pretty dramatically. So that is a huge concern for me, because the corn right now is V5, V6. It's still trying to metabolize that chemistry. At the same time, within the plant, we're determining ear size, what kind of negative effects is that having on the plant. So that's really concerning for me, and it's something I'm keeping my eye on throughout the rest of the summer and how we're going to end the season with there. But we talked about a lot this fall when we were going through chemical plans with producers and price being, a big deal. Same time, crop safety is just as important, because, if you're not saving on the front end, it's costing you on the back end. And that's what I'm afraid for most. Another thing to be watching out for as we get back into the field, when it does dry out, is this corn's kind of been set in the same height, but it has been growing. So we need to make sure we're getting out of the sprayer, we're growth staging, making sure we're not off label on our applications. We have a lot of applications. Atrazine is probably the most restricting proposed at 11 inches, 12 inches. But we've got others that are V8, and it's a strong cutoff because of crop safety and what's going on with the plant of determining yield at the end of the season. So we'll need to make sure that we're doing our due diligence when we're out spraying with our custom applicators, but also, if you're out in the field, just hop out real fast. Make sure you're still on label before making those applications.
Yeah, Shannon, that was one of the things I was thinking about when Scott was talking about some of these beans. Scott and I were talking about some of these beans going to be flowering here soon. Is the corn? We just not had GDUs to make the corn grow like it is, and I know I've seen some fields that are, like you mentioned, V6, V8 that are just still knee high. And so you look at it and you're just assuming, oh, well, I'm perfectly fine and safe if you just drive in the field, by the field real quick, right? And so actually getting out, walking the field, taking a look at it, it's going to be a very important, top dress as well from top dress seeds. And we're kind of combining everything together at one because we've had some rains of trying to get herbicide sprayed and getting top dress on too, but a lot of these fields it's time for top dress as well. And so putting together management plans and doing what's best for the crop, it's really critical right now to be having a good look at your fields.
Yeah, that's good stuff. That's good stuff, Shannon, because that plant's still progressing, even though I think we're going to see a lot of this early corn be, short at the end of the year. But all right, sounds good. We'll save the best for last, right, Craig? What's going on in North Missouri, man?
Yeah, good morning. My territory is kind of pretty similar to Scott's report. I mean, a lot of the corn we've got some corn that just got planted, just kind of coming out of the ground all the way up to, V7. A lot of those herbicide applications on that earlier corn are pretty well wrapped up at this point. Some of those were a little bit of a challenge to get applied just with some of the rain that we've had here in the last week or two. Top dress applications are happening. On soybeans, yeah, we're, anywhere from just emerging all the way up to about V4. On those later planted fields, I know there's going to be some instances where there's going to be replant happen just because we didn't get seed into good moisture. We're consultants are getting out in the field, kind of taking a look at those now and trying to get those problems addressed. So that ground got pretty hard before we started getting some of these rains, and it was pretty dry. So I think for the most part, where we did get the seed to soil contact, we're in good shape. But where that was maybe lacking, we're going to have to address some of those stands. Wheat this week's kind of milk stage for the most part. Kind of well into grain fill at this point. I did get an alert there earlier in the week for true armyworm over in Holt County. If you were signed up for those MU extension alerts, they sent one of those out on Tuesday, I believe. Seeing a little bit of some wheathead armyworm in some wheat fields around. Just something to kind of keep an eye out for. But also, and just even a lot of those grass and pasture fields, I know I've been getting a lot of calls here the last 2-3 days about what do we spray on some of our hay crops and things of that nature, pasture. Some of those diamides work really well, like Prevathon, Besiege. Those are two that come to mind specifically when you're looking at some resistance to some of our, realistically, some of our cheaper insecticide products that we're used to running, the Warriors, the Baythroids of those natures. And a lot of those are ones that we have kind of readily available on hand. But in addition to that, I mean, there's kind of on the insect front. I mean, I think it'd been a couple weeks ago about some spider mites, and still hearing some reports of those in the area. I think there's going to be some applications made to kind of basically just address those, because some of those spider mites are now suppressing growth in some soybean fields and everything. So where we've already kind of had some of those cool, wet conditions, you don't need the insect pressure there that's also kind of holding some of those beans back from really getting up and going and branching out to hopefully get to canopy here, in the next few weeks. But kind of what we've got going on up here. There's also been some stripe rust kind of reported in some of these wheat fields, specifically more on the eastern side of the state. So that's kind of a watch out, and also some head scab reports are coming in. I think a lot of the, we're kind of a lot of those fields got fungicide applications made. They're at flowering or at heading. So we're kind of on the tail end of finishing these things out now. I don't know that they're going to be too yield robbing, but something good to be aware of anyway.
Yeah, good stuff, Craig. I'm glad you touched on the uneven or the emergence issues that we had with some of that. We had a lot of crop go in the ground there in a fairly short period of time, and just it dried out on some guys, and you get some of these rolling fields that had different soil moistures in different parts of the field, and just seen some very uneven emergence on corn and soybeans. I think we're going to end up with a stand because we've picked up a couple extra little rains, that are going to bring the rest of it up. But I'm not very excited about the way it's going to come up. So.
Yeah, and really on some of those cornfields too. I mean, I don't know how widespread it is, but I've also gotten several calls this week too, just about, this corn brace roots are coming out now on some of this later planted corn. Those plants are, V2 to V4 in a lot of cases, and those nodal roots are coming out, and we had some shallow planted corn during that dry spell, just struggling to get it in the ground. I mean, some of that corn only made it in at an inch or so in places, and man, those stands look pretty uneven, really. And
yep.
I mean, that's going to have some repercussions later as well.
Yep. It definitely is. And yeah, absolutely. We kind of had a few forces working against us. It was hot and dry when the crop was planted, so folks struggled to get it into moisture, and then we kind of turned cool and cloudy, and so then that corn didn't have a lot of vigor trying to emerge, and it didn't seem like, and so it's just kind of a unique set of circumstances. But yeah, ideal planting conditions always win, it seems like, and we definitely didn't seem to have them there. So. All right, folks. Well, I appreciate all the reports. Anybody got anything else that they forgot to add? Okay, hearing nothing. Appreciate your all's time this morning jumping on. Appreciate all the topics that you guys kind of brought forward. Some good things to be thinking about, especially as we move into kind of weed control, top dress, and trying to get everything else done in the narrow windows that we have. So appreciate your all's time this morning. Appreciate everybody's time listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to Made for Agriculture, brought to you by MFA, your whole farm solution.